I'm standing in the basement of the Multnomah County Library in Portland, holding a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird that smells like dust and old paper, and there's a letter inside. Not a bookmark, not a receipt, a letter addressed to me, in handwriting I haven't seen in 7 years. My brother's handwriting, the brother I haven't spoken to since the night I told him I never wanted to see him again. The brother who's been dead for 3 years. And the first line says, "I need you to know the truth before it's too late." His name was Danny, Daniel James Carpenter, but everyone called him Danny. He was 2 years younger than me, which meant I was supposed to protect him, supposed to look out for him, supposed to be the responsible one. That's what our mom always said. Take care of your brother, Ryan. Like it was my job. Like he was my responsibility. And for a long time I did. Until I didn't. Danny had this thing with pens, specifically red pens. He'd collect them from everywhere, banks, hotels, doctor's offices. Our mom used to find them in his pockets when she did laundry. In high school, his backpack was full of them. Dozens of red pens, most of them barely used. "Why red?" I asked him once. We were in his room, me helping him study for a biology test. He was definitely going to fail. He clicked one of the pens open and closed, open and closed. That clicking sound became the soundtrack of his thinking. "Red stands out," he said. "You can't ignore red." He was 16 then. I was 18. I thought I understood him. The letter appeared on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I was at the library looking for a book my daughter needed for a school project. She's 10, same age Danny was when he broke his arm falling out of the treehouse I'd built in our backyard. I'd told him not to climb so high. He didn't listen. He never listened. I was searching the stacks, running my finger along the spines, and I pulled out To Kill a Mockingbird because it was next to the book I actually needed. The pages were worn soft, the cover creased, and when I opened it, an envelope fell out. Cream-colored, aged to yellow at the edges, my name written across the front in blue ink. Ryan Carpenter. His handwriting, unmistakable. My hand started shaking before I even registered what I was looking at. The library basement was quiet, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of someone coughing on the floor above. I picked up the envelope. It wasn't sealed. The flap was tucked in, like he'd wanted it to be easy to open, like he'd known someone would find it, like he'd known I would find it. But how? How did he know I'd pick up this specific book in this specific library 7 years after I last saw him? 3 years after his funeral that I didn't attend. I didn't open it right away. I stood there, holding the envelope and the book, my heart doing this painful, stuttering thing in my chest. The last time I'd seen Danny's handwriting was on a birthday card he'd sent me the year before everything fell apart. "To the best big brother in the world," it said. I'd thrown it away without reading past the first line. I was that angry, that hurt, that done. Let me take you back. You need to understand what we were before everything broke. Danny and I grew up in a small house in northeast Portland. Our dad left when Danny was 5, which made me 7. I remember him more clearly than Danny did, the smell of his cologne, the way he'd read us bedtime stories with different voices for each character, the sound of his laugh. Danny barely remembered him at all. What was he like? Danny would ask me sometimes, and I'd tell him. I'd make our dad sound better than he probably was, kinder, more present, because Danny needed that. He needed to believe he came from something good. Our mum worked 2 jobs to keep us fed and housed. She was a waitress at a diner during the day and cleaned office buildings at night. We didn't see her much, which meant I raised Danny more than she did. I made sure he did his homework, made sure he ate something other than cereal for dinner, made sure he got to school on time. I was his parent in all the ways that mattered, and I resented it. God, I resented it. But I did it anyway because what choice did I have? Danny was smart, really smart, not book smart, he struggled with that, but people smart. He could read a room better than anyone I've ever known, could tell when someone was lying or hurting or hiding something. "You're upset," he'd say to me when I'd come home from a bad day at my part-time job. I'd deny it, and he'd just look at me with those knowing eyes and say, "It's okay to be upset." He was 12, I was 14, and he was comforting me. High school changed things. I got into a good college on a partial scholarship, University of Oregon. It was my way out, my chance to build something different than what we'd grown up with. I worked my ass off. Perfect grades, perfect attendance, perfect application. Danny was proud of me. "You're going to do amazing things," he said the night I got my acceptance letter. We were sitting on the porch of our house, watching the streetlights flicker on. He was clicking one of his red pens. "Click, click, click. You always said I was the smart one," I told him. "Yeah," he said, "because you are." But college meant leaving Danny. Leaving him in that house with our mom who was never home. Leaving him to navigate high school alone. Leaving him to figure out life without me running interference. I told myself he'd be fine. He was 15, old enough to take care of himself. But I knew. Deep down, I knew he needed me. And I left anyway. The first year we talked all the time. Phone calls every week, texts every day. He'd tell me about school, about the friends he was making, about the girl he liked but was too nervous to talk to. I'd tell him about college, about my classes, about the internship I was trying to land. It felt normal, like the distance didn't matter, like we were still brothers who told each other everything. The second year, the calls got less frequent. I was busy. Internship, girlfriend, future to build. Danny would call, and I'd send him to voicemail. "I'll call you back," I'd text. But I wouldn't. Not for days sometimes. Not until he stopped calling altogether. The third year, I came home for Thanksgiving. Danny was 17. He looked different, thinner, older, tired in a way that didn't make sense for someone his age. "You okay?" I asked. We were in the kitchen, me helping Mom make dinner while Danny set the table. He dropped a fork, and it clattered against the tile floor. Loud, sharp. He picked it up without looking at me. "Fine," he said. But he wasn't fine. I could see it. That thing he'd always been able to do, reading people, sensing when something was wrong. I could do it too. I just chose not to, because if I acknowledged something was wrong, I'd have to deal with it. And I didn't have time to deal with it. 3 months later, I got a call from our mom. It was 2 a.m. I was at a party, drunk, happy, living my college life. "Ryan," she said. Her voice was shaking. "Something happened." Danny had been arrested. Possession with intent to distribute. Pills, oxycodone. A lot of it. They'd found it in his car during a traffic stop. He was facing serious charges. Felony charges. Prison time. I didn't believe it at first. Danny didn't do drugs. He barely even drank. "There's a mistake," I told my mom. "He wouldn't. They found them in his car, Ryan. In his backpack, along with a scale and cash." I drove home the next day. Danny was out on bail, sitting in his room, looking at the wall. I stood in the doorway and he wouldn't look at me. One of his red pens was on the desk. Cap off, ink dried out from disuse. "What the hell did you do?" I said. "I made a mistake." "A mistake? Danny, you're going to prison. Do you understand that? You're throwing your life away." He finally looked at me. His eyes were red. He'd been crying. "I know." "Why? Why would you do something so stupid?" "I needed the money." "For what? Mum's working. We're getting by. What could you possibly need money for that? Was worth this?" He didn't answer. Just looked back at the wall, and I lost it. All the anger I'd been carrying, about raising him, about sacrificing my childhood for his, about worrying about him from 2 hours away while trying to build my own life. It came pouring out. "I gave up everything for you," I said. "Do you know that? Everything. And this is how you repay me. By dealing drugs. By destroying your future. I'm done. I'm done taking care of you. I'm done cleaning up your messes. You want to ruin your life? Fine, but I'm not going to watch." He looked at me then, really looked at me. "Ryan, don't. Just don't. I never want to see you again." I left, drove back to Eugene, blocked his number. When he tried to email me, I deleted them without reading. When our mom called to update me on his case, I told her I didn't want to hear it. He made his choice. He could live with the consequences. Danny pleaded guilty, got 3 years in a state facility, served 18 months with good behavior. When he got out, he tried to reach out. Letters, calls. He showed up at my apartment once. I was living in Seattle by then, had a good job, a girlfriend who'd become my fiancée. I saw him through the peephole and didn't open the door, stood there in silence while he knocked. "Ryan, please," he said through the door. "I need to talk to you. I need to explain." I waited until he left. That was 4 years ago, the last time I saw him alive. He died in a car accident 3 years ago, single vehicle, lost control on a wet road. Our mom called to tell me. I didn't go to the funeral, told myself I couldn't get time off work. But that was a lie. The truth was, I didn't want to. Didn't want to stand there and pretend I was sad. Didn't want people telling me they were sorry for my loss when I'd lost him years before he died, when I'd chosen to lose him. And now I'm standing in a library basement, holding a letter he somehow knew I'd find. A letter that starts with, "I need you to know the truth before it's too late." My daughter called down from upstairs. "Dad, did you find the book?" "Yeah," I called back. My voice sounded strange, hollow. "Give me a minute." I tucked the letter into my jacket pocket, checked out the books she needed, drove home on autopilot. My wife asked if I was okay. "Fine," I said. "Just tired." I waited until everyone was asleep, until the house was completely silent except for the sound of the heater clicking on and off. Then I went down to my office, closed the door, and pulled out the letter. The envelope was soft from age. I could see the outline of folded paper inside. The weight of it felt impossibly heavy. I sat at my desk. The lamp cast a small circle of light in the darkness. My hands were shaking so badly I had to set the envelope down and take a breath. Then another. Then another. The house was so quiet I could hear my watch ticking, could hear my own heartbeat. I thought about Danny at 17, clicking his red pen while he thought, click, click, click. The sound used to drive me crazy. Now I'd give anything to hear it again. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of notebook paper, folded in thirds. His handwriting was messier than I remembered, like he'd written it in a hurry. Or maybe his hands had been shaking too. "Ryan," it started, "I need you to know the truth before it's too late. I'm writing this and hiding it in the one book I know you'll eventually read to your kids. The book we read together when we were young. The book about doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything. I'm hoping by the time you find this, enough time will have passed that you can hear what I need to say." My throat tightened. I had read To Kill a Mockingbird to Danny when he was in middle school. I was supposed to read it for my own English class, and he'd asked me what it was about, so I read it out loud to him, chapter by chapter, over the course of a few weeks. He'd sit on the floor of my room, clicking his red pen, listening. It was one of the good memories, before everything got complicated, before I left, before he got arrested. The letter continued. "The drugs weren't mine. I know you won't believe that. I know how it looked, but they weren't mine. They were yours." I stopped breathing. Read the sentence again, and again, yours. That didn't make sense. I didn't... But then I remembered. A night before Thanksgiving, my junior year, I'd come home for a long weekend. One of my roommates had asked me to hold on to something for him. "Just until I get home for break," he'd said. "My parents are visiting campus, and I can't have it in the room." It was a small bag of pills. "Just for pain," he'd said. "I hurt my back. Doctor won't prescribe anymore. I got them from a friend. It's not a big deal." And like an idiot, I'd said yes, shoved the bag in my backpack and forgot about it. When I went home, the backpack came with me, and then I went back to school, and the backpack stayed in Danny's room, because I'd left it there by accident, and he'd offered to send it to me later. "I found them in your backpack," the letter said. "You'd left it at home. I was going to mail it to you, but I looked inside first to make sure there was nothing that would break or leak, and I found the pills, a lot of them, and the scale, and the cash. I knew you didn't know they were there. I knew someone had put you in a bad situation. But I also knew that if anyone found them, you'd be the one in trouble. You'd lose your scholarship, lose your future, everything you'd worked so hard for, everything you'd sacrificed for. My hands were shaking so hard, I almost dropped the paper. I remembered Danny offering to send me my backpack, remembered telling him not to worry about it, I'd grab it next time I came home. But I hadn't come home again until Thanksgiving. By then, he'd already been arrested. I was driving your car that day, the letter continued. My car was in the shop and Mom was at work and I needed to get to a job interview. You always left your keys on the hook by the door when you were home. So I took your car. And I took the backpack because I'd put the pills back in it. I was going to drop them in a dumpster somewhere, get rid of them so they couldn't hurt you. But I got pulled over for a broken taillight, and the cop asked to search the car, and I panicked. I could see it. Could picture Danny, 17 years old, terrified, knowing that if he said the pills were mine, I'd lose everything. Knowing that if he said he was just getting rid of them, no one would believe him. Knowing he had seconds to make a decision that would change everything. I told them the pills were mine, the letter said. I told them I was dealing. I made up a whole story about needing money, about making bad choices, and they believed me, because of course they did. You were the golden child, the college student with the bright future, and I was just the kid who barely passed his classes. The one who'd probably screw up eventually anyway. Tears were running down my face, hot, blurring my vision. I wiped them away and kept reading. You asked me why I needed money. I couldn't tell you the truth because you would have stopped me. You would have insisted on taking the blame yourself. You would have thrown away everything you'd worked for. And I couldn't let that happen. You always said I was the smart one. But you were wrong. You were always the smart one. The strong one, the one who was going to make it out and build something real. I was just the kid brother who you had to take care of, the burden you didn't ask for, and this was my chance to take care of you for once, to give you back even a fraction of what you'd given me. The words were getting harder to read, my tears wouldn't stop. The house was still silent, the watch on my wrist kept ticking. I thought about Danny at his trial, standing in front of a judge, accepting a felony conviction he didn't earn. For me, for my future. While I was in Eugene, living my life, angry at him for throwing his away. I know you're angry, the letter said. I know you hate me, and that's okay. I'd rather you hate me and have the life you deserve than know the truth and live with the guilt. But I'm writing this because I need you to know eventually that I did it because I love you. Because you're my brother. Because everything good I had in my life came from you. And if I could give you a future by taking the fall, that was a trade I'd make 1,000 times over. There was one more paragraph. I almost couldn't read it, but I forced myself to keep going. Don't let this destroy you. Don't let guilt take the life I tried to protect. You're going to be a great dad. You're going to have kids who look up to you the way I always did. And when they ask you about me, tell them I was good. Tell them I made mistakes, but I loved you. Tell them that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is sacrifice yourself for someone else. And tell them I clicked my red pens when I thought because red stands out. You can't ignore red. I didn't want you to ignore this. I wanted you to know, so you could forgive me. And maybe, eventually, forgive yourself. You were always the smart one, Ryan. But I got to be the brave one, just this once. I'm okay with that. I love you. Danny. I sat in that office for hours, holding the letter, crying, thinking about every moment I'd dismissed him, every call I'd ignored, every time he'd tried to explain and I'd cut him off, every year I'd spent hating him for something he did to save me. The red pen on my desk, one I'd bought without thinking about it, a habit I'd picked up without realizing why, sat next to his letter. I picked it up, clicked it open and closed. Open and closed. The sound echoed in the quiet room, and I understood. Finally. Why red? Because red stands out, because some things you can't ignore, even when you try, even when you want to, even when you've spent years running from the truth. Danny gave me everything, his future, his freedom, his life, and I gave him nothing but anger and silence in return. I didn't go to his funeral, didn't say goodbye, didn't tell him I was sorry, didn't tell him I loved him, didn't give him the one thing he probably wanted most, forgiveness. Not for what he did, but for what I did, for leaving him, for abandoning him, for believing the worst and never asking for the truth. I can't get that time back, can't undo the silence, can't tell him I understand now, can't thank him for the sacrifice that cost him everything and gave me everything, can't hold him and cry and tell him he was wrong. He was always the smart one, the brave one, the good one. And I was just the brother who was too blind to see it. But I can tell you that the people we love are carrying things we don't know about, fighting battles we can't see, making sacrifices we don't understand. And if we walk away before we know the full story, we might lose our chance to say what matters, to forgive what needs forgiving, to love who needs loving, to stand by them instead of walking away. Don't do what I did. Don't assume you know everything. Don't let pride or anger or hurt keep you from asking questions, from listening, from staying. Because one day you might find a letter in a library book and it will tell you everything you should have known, everything you could have said, everything you lost by walking away too soon. And by then, it will be too late to say I'm sorry, too late to say thank you, too late to say I love you, too late for everything except regret. The red pen is still clicking in my hand. Open and closed. Open and closed. It's the only sound in the room, and it's all I have left of my brother who saved me, and I let die thinking I hated him. Don't wait for the letter. Don't wait for the proof. Don't wait until it's too late. Love them now. Forgive them now. Listen now, while there's still time, before all you have left is a red pen and words you'll never get to say.